Joe Rogan sits down with Fedor Gorst, the young pool prodigy who is rewriting what people think about cue sports. At just 25, Fedor has already collected world championships, US Opens, and the respect of players around the globe. Joe wastes no time calling him what many already believe he is, the Michael Jordan of pool. But this conversation isn't just about shots and tournaments. It's about the grind behind greatness, the sacrifices nobody sees, and the future of a sport that deserves far more recognition. Right from the start, Joe is fascinated by Fedor's insane schedule. Fedor explains that in the last month alone, he's played 4 major tournaments back-to-back, traveling from Saudi Arabia to Europe and then across the US. The jet lag is constant, the sleep is inconsistent, but he shrugs it off. In pool, opportunities are rare, and if you want to stay sharp, you show up no matter how tired you are. Joe shakes his head and says that kind of grind is exactly what separates the good from the legendary. They dive into the differences between eras. Joe makes the case that players today might be the best ever. Tables are built tighter, conditions are harsher, and the global talent pool is deeper than it's ever been. If you're winning in this era, he says, you're probably the greatest of all time. Fedor gives credit to the legends, names like Efren Reyes, Ronnie O'Sullivan, and Shane Van Boening. But Joe pushes back. He insists that mastering today's field, under today's pressure, deserves recognition as the pinnacle. Fedor describes his approach at the table. For him, pool isn't just angles and geometry, it's a mental battle. Before every shot, he takes a breath, clears his mind, and visualizes the path of the cue ball. If I don't see it in my head, I don't shoot, he says. Joe relates immediately, comparing it to fighting. The silence before a strike, the calm before a storm. At the top level, pool becomes a war of psychology, where one mistake under pressure can unravel hours of dominance. One of the highlights comes when Fedor recounts his marathon matches against Shane Van Boening. These weren't casual games. They were grueling, 3-day races with over 100 racks played, thousands of dollars wagered, and reputations on the line. The first time, Fedor lost, and it crushed him. But instead of breaking, he came back harder, trained even more obsessively, and eventually beat Shane in a rematch. Joe lights up at this story, saying that's what makes a champion, not the wins, but the refusal to stay beaten. The conversation shifts to identity and belonging. Because of politics, Fedor was barred from representing Russia. But now, with permanent residency in the US, he competes under the American flag in events like the Mosconi Cup, which is basically pool's Ryder Cup. He admits it was strange at first, but now he feels embraced. When American fans chant his name, he feels at home. For him, it proves that America really is a place where talent and hard work matter more than where you were born. Joe nods and says that's the American spirit at its best. Joe presses him about the Mosconi Cup atmosphere. Unlike traditional tournaments where silence is the rule, the Mosconi is rowdy. Fans yelling, booing, chanting in your ear while you line up shots. Fedor admits it's brutal, but also thrilling. The pressure is insane, he says, but when you come through, it's the best feeling in the world. Joe compares it to the UFC, where the energy of the crowd makes or breaks fighters. The parallel isn't lost. Pool at that level is combat, just quieter. They share laughs about the colorful characters in pool. Joe brings up Earl Strickland, famous for his antics, wild gadgets, and fiery outbursts. Fedor grins and says every sport needs its eccentrics. Joe argues that while showmen get attention, true mastery often looks boring. Watching someone like Fedor dominate with robotic precision isn't flashy, but it's the ultimate display of control. That's greatness, Joe says, when you make the impossible look routine. The talk goes deeper into the physical demands of the game. To outsiders, pool looks easy, just standing around a table. But Fedor describes the toll. Hours hunched over, traveling with no recovery, the strain on the back, shoulders, and eyes. He's built a routine that includes stretching, resistance training, and even cold plunges to stay sharp. Joe relates, saying fighters and golfers face the same one-sided stress. Both agree that to last, you have to treat pool like a sport, not a hobby. They touch on the gambling culture that shaped pool's identity. For decades, the soul of pool lived in smoky rooms and long money matches. Fedor respects that history, but focuses now on official tournaments. Joe admits the danger and the action gave pool its edge, but he hopes some of that raw energy never fades, because it made the sport legendary. Looking forward, they discuss pool's future. Joe praises Matchroom Sports for elevating the game with arenas, lights, live streams, and marketing. Fedor adds that in Asia, pool is already treated like a major spectator sport, with halls packed full of fans. What pool needs in the US, Joe suggests, is a cultural spark, maybe a viral moment, or even a massive event, funded with ridiculous prize money. He jokes that if Saudi Arabia ever put up $25 million for a single match, the pressure would be so insane it could change the sport overnight. The comparison with snooker comes up too. Joe says snooker is pool on steroids, massive tables, tiny balls, brutal difficulty. Fedor respects it deeply and names Ronnie O'Sullivan as a genius, but admits snooker feels slow to him, too focused on defense. Pool, in contrast, has rhythm and speed. Joe sums it up. Snooker is like chess in slow motion. Pool is a street fight. Both laugh, but the respect is clear. These games demand inhuman levels of precision. As the conversation nears the end, Joe asks Fedor about sacrifice. Fedor admits pool consumes him. 10-hour practice days, constant flights, and endless tournaments leave little time for anything else. Relationships, hobbies, downtime, they all take a back seat. Joe says it outright. To be great, you've got to be a little selfish. Fedor doesn't deny it. For him, it's worth it. Pool isn't just a career, it's his life. They close by reflecting on what mastery really means. To outsiders, pool is just knocking balls into pockets, but at the highest level, it's a dance of geometry, psychology, and resilience. Every shot is a battle, every match a war of nerves. 1 millimeter off, and everything changes. Joe tells listeners that watching Fedor is like watching mastery in motion. Calm on the outside, chaos on the inside, precision deciding fate. It's artistry born of obsession. Fedor Gorst may only be 25, but he speaks and competes with the wisdom of a veteran and the discipline of a monk. Listening to him, you understand why Rogan sees him as the Michael Jordan of pool. His story isn't just about sport. It's about what it takes to chase mastery, what it costs to reach greatness, and why the pursuit itself is beautiful, even when the world barely notices.
And that's the heart of Joe Rogan's conversation with Fedor Gorst. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit subscribe, check out my TikTok for shorter recaps, and come back to check for more podcasts in 10 minutes or less. That way you'll never miss the big picture, even if you don't have 3 hours to spare.